Okay, let's get into this real quick so that we have a full understanding of essentially what Donald Trump's plan for Social Security benefits is going into basically 2025. He's obviously presidential hopeful winner. He's been president before. He knows how to play the game now. His competitor is Joseph Biden, who basically has a very simple plan for Social Security benefits to be fixed. Joseph Biden's plan is A, raise the FICA tax so that anybody earning above $400,000 has to pay all the FICA taxes, which would, of course, fund Social Security benefits all the way into the future. However, that'll never pass because rich people will not allow it to pass because they don't want to pay over 15% more on income that they receive. So it ain't going to happen. However, his second tactic is using basically Commissioner Martin O'Malley, who's been in since December, to go ahead and get people excited about the SSA, change the face of the SSA, have a bunch of online videos be produced, and make it a more popular, better working, and hire more employees type of agency, which is working. So that particular part of Biden's plan is working. However, Trump on the other side, who has no power of the Social Security Administration, basically has come out with some new notations. Now, I see already Charlton Zimmerman put in, is it about the Project 2025? No, we're doing a complete video separate on Project 2025 because that is not something that he has signed off on. It is not something that he has thrown his support behind. It is obviously a more Republican, and it's actually a more dyed-in-the-wool classic Republican publication group as opposed to what President Trump usually goes with. So what we're focusing on is more specifically what he said, not Project 2025, because that is not something that he has fully supported in any way, fashion, or form. There was an article from Yahoo News. Trump's new platform pledges to end inflation and maintain the retirement age to receive Social Security and Medicare benefits. This is by Ayelet Shafee. This was done on July 8th. Let's go through this real quick. Americans got some new insight into the issues of former President Donald Trump and what he would prioritize should he win the presidential election. Trump's campaign announced on Monday that the Republican National Committee adopted the former president's platform for the Republican Party, consisting of 20 principles. The platform is a clear outline for voters on what Trump is thinking as the country inches toward the November election. Here's a quote, America needs determined Republican leadership at every level of the government to address the core threats to our very survival. Our disastrously open border, our weakened economy, crippling restrictions on American energy production, our depleted military, attacks on the American system of justice, and much more. The platform's preamble says, to make clear, and here's another quote, our commitment, we offer to the American people the 2024 GOP platform to make America great again. It is a forward-looking agenda that begins with the following 20 promises that we will accomplish very quickly when we win the White House and Republican majorities in the House and Senate. It continues. The platform addresses a range of economic issues, including a pledge to end inflation and make America affordable again. It also says it would preserve Social Security and Medicare benefits without any cuts and not raise the retirement age. Now, as you know, he needs those 70 million voters on the Social Security level. Remember, Republicans tend to have big groups that support them. Democrats have to go and do a lot of piecemeal work and get a bunch of different groups to go ahead and support them, like minority groups, LGBTQ groups, etc. Whereas the Republicans get the heavy hitter, old people groups, the heavy hitter, Christian groups, stuff like that. So these giant, massive, millions upon millions upon millions upon millions, yada, yada groups. Okay. Now, with that said, the platform says the GOP would address inflation by ending illegal immigration and lifting restrictions on American energy production, which it says would allow access to more affordable energy. Still, the president has limited power to actually address overall prices, with the issue primarily in the hands of the Federal Reserve. However, the president would be in control of essentially allowing people to dig, and produce oil and put down lots of piping. So one of the things, if he did get in, that you'll be seeing a lot when it comes to oil production, which makes everything across the board cheaper. A lot of people don't understand how oil works in this country. And I grew up on a farm, so I understand from beginning to end what happens. You're either getting the oil from American grounds or waters, or you're getting it from overseas. If it's overseas, it's coming over on a tanker usually. If it's in the ground, you're usually using smaller boats. Then basically it goes onto shipping trucks and things like that to get it to the different locations. There's two models that people use for a lot of this oil. Of course, there is the commercial style, which is what you guys are used to buying. There is then the, reduced price model, which is, of course, what government and businesses can buy into, / off-road, right? Off-road tax diesel, off-road tax gas, any of that stuff. It's basically a fuel with a dye in it where you don't pay as much, but you can't use it to drive on the roads. You can only use it for farm equipment or commercial equipment that's not being used for over the road sort of stuff. All right. So bottom line is, if you go ahead and make oil, any type of it, gasoline, heavy fuel, diesel, whatever, kerosene, whatever, if you make it, even natural gas, if you make it more affordable where the farmers are getting it cheaper, it starts with the farmers. If you get it to the farmers the cheapest that it can be, then basically you end up with an bushel product, these giant silos filled with the things that we use. You end up with something that's cheaper for us to buy as essentially poor Americans. Now that's the one thing that I think we can all agree on. Over the past 4 years, Americans have become poor, right? If you look at the statistics related to essentially how much credit card debt there is, it's skyrocketed. How much savings they have in the bank, it's depleted. Americans are poor. We've become this weird first world nation where the government is quasi rich but also bankrupt, and then the Americans are just hyper poor because they're overtaxed. So bottom line is getting the oil cheaper would definitely help Social Security benefits, because then the products that the retired and disabled and survivors and DAC people, all of the Social Security programs, including the SSI people, all of those products would be cheaper, which would be a huge win for basically the Social Security beneficiaries. Okay. It would be basically an increase in benefits. It's just not something the SSA would administer. And the president would have the capacity to start getting the EPA to reduce their restrictions and increase the amount of availability of these natural resources to these corporations to go ahead and get them to the people. During the first debate, I'm going back to the article, during the first debate between Trump and President Joe Biden at the end of June, the two candidates clashed with each other over who was to blame for the high prices Americans continue to face. Trump falsely claimed that Biden inherited the great economy in the history of our country, or the greatest economy in the history of our country, adding, if I'm given another 4 years, I'll be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. To be fair, Trump had a good first 2 years, lots of good plans, lots of capitalism ideas. People will always make these aggressive, snappy comments about him saying, oh, every company, he's had is bankrupt. No, a very, very small percentage of the companies that he's had are bankrupt. He has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies, but that's because the average individual doesn't actually realize how business works, because they've always been employees, or they've been on disability their entire life, or whatever reason it is. Every time somebody buys a property, every time somebody goes ahead and does some sort of like making a product, every time somebody has a rental this or rental that, they start a company for that particular thing to create limited liability. So Trump has had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds over his life, thousands and thousands of companies. However, some of the headliners have gone under, and there have been massive lawsuits because of the size of it and how it affected people. It hurt some people for sure. There's no doubt about it. We can't disagree with that. But in the grand scheme of things, right, he's had some major ups and downs, but he's been up. He's been up for a while now, but he's had major downs, major ups. He's had it where he's been millions and millions and millions and millions and millions in debt. But to be fair, again, people who also come from the poverty class, who are usually bitching about him and saying, hey, everything he's done has failed, that they don't understand how business works. There's debt, and people are like, debt is bad. Debt isn't bad. There's bad debt and there's good debt. Bad debt is where you have it and you shouldn't have it, and it's hurting you, and it's not adding anything to the bottom line into the future. Good debt, rental properties, you get a mortgage on a house and you live in the house, best debt in the world. Oh, best debt in the world, right? That's the best thing you could ever have. People are like, I don't want to have a house. I don't want to be in debt. Nope, that's 100% incorrect. You should never live in that mental state. That is horrific. If you have a house that you live in, right? So you're getting the actual living benefit of it. And then you pay the monthly amount that's due on the mortgage, right? Which is just like rent. And then that house continues to go up in worth over time. You have basically directly paid into an asset that's growing in worth that you can borrow against and potentially rent out in case you want to and make even more money off of it. But again, the poverty class individuals, and a lot of them are in the Social Security beneficiary land, they don't understand how business works. And so for that point, they're going to attack Trump because it makes sense to them, because to them, they only see high priority claims, CNN, MSNBC, they're just pumping anti-Trump stuff. And to them, it feels good. It feels right to dislike him as a person and think that everything he's done has failed. It hasn't. he's done way more that's done well. It's just he's had some real high profile claims where it went to shit, and it was not good, and he didn't handle it properly. Now, with that said, when it comes to the economy situation, first 2 years he was doing pretty well. Second 2 years, COVID situation took over, although it was really just the last year, in which case he spent trillions and trillions, which is ironic because the Democrats, who said he had the worst economy because he spent this much, he agreed to pay out less than what they wanted. And they demanded that he pay out more. And now at the end of Biden's election, they're saying he spent all this money. He's a terrible president. But he spent less than what they demanded of him, which is always why I watch these political things. And I think to myself, how dare you? How dare you, this person, and it's both sides, Republicans and Democrats, because they will throw mud when they were the cause of the muddy field. It's disgusting, and we see it all the time. All right, back to the article. Prior administrations, like former President Bill Clinton, had greater economic growth than Trump, and Biden has overseen a lower unemployment rate than Trump. That's okay. So those two sentences right there are lies. They're de facto lies. President Bill Clinton was in a much better time. They weren't trillions and trillions and trillions in debt as a country. He didn't have COVID. So that's a disingenuous lie. They're lying to you right there. Next one. Biden has overseen a lower unemployment rate than Trump. Again, a total and complete BS lie. And I mean, when you look at this is specifically, a pro, Democrat oriented paper, you have to understand they're going to throw this bullshit at you. And then you're going to have to internalize it and figure out what you want to do with it. Because at the end of the day, Trump was hiring more and more American companies to go and do American needed, whether it was military, manufacturing, or it was future farming, or is building future ships, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just one of those sorts of things. So, anyways, I just wanted to go ahead and say that, again, not correct. All right, next one. On the issue of Social Security, Biden said he would ensure the program's strength by making the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share right now. The very wealthy are never going to allow a 15% plus new tax on their income. So again, Biden's plan, total bullshit, never going to actually work. While Trump said during the debate that Biden was planning to destroy the program, the latest Social Security and Medicare Board of Trustees report found that the program would only be able to pay out full benefits for the next 11 years, realistically probably 9, after which 83% of the benefits will be available, realistically more likely 78, 79-ish%, depending on how things go. It might be worse because you have to understand, I don't think that they're appropriately putting in what the fertility rate is actually doing. And if there's not enough people being born and paying into the system, then it ends. Which, by the way, subnote here, if you are a boomer telling a millennial to go bleep themselves because they should have to pay back their student loans, you should be nice to the millennials because they're the ones paying your retirement benefits. So if you're a boomer sitting there thinking, oh, I paid my retirement benefits, now I have to get them. You actually didn't. You paid for your grandparents' benefits, and now the millennials are paying for yours. So just remember, when push comes to shove, the millennials are ready to stab you in the back, and the boomers for the boomers are ready to stab the millennials in the back when it comes to changing retirement so that the millennials don't get one. So just remember, you have two parties that are ready to go ahead and et tu brute both sides, okay? The Biden administration has previously said that the Republican lawmakers plan to cut Social Security and Medicare, but Trump himself has pushed back on GOP discussions to alter the programs or raise the retirement age. The platform says that Trump has made absolutely clear that it will not cut one penny for Medicare or Social Security. American citizens work hard their entire or their whole lives contributing to Social Security and Medicare. These programs are promises to our seniors, even though technically we have no legal right to them. 1937 Supreme Court ruling says they're just a tax. We don't actually have a right to retirement. Ensuring that they can live their golden years with dignity. Again, it's a total bullshit promise. The politicians always use this. Democrats use it. Republicans use it. It's a lie. 100% a lie. Supreme Court has ruled that's just a tax. The platform also addresses immigration, abortion, and ending left-wing gender insanity, like keeping men out of women's sports. The RNC is expected to take a final vote on the platform next week. All right. So just to summarize, even though that article doesn't bullet point, it's honestly a bit of left rhetoric, kind of like pushing agenda stuff. And by the way, there will be somebody in the chat who says Biden did the best with unemployment in the history of the United States. Well, when everybody was forced to be financially paid to not work and then come back to work, that's not actually a statistic that should be allowed or used. I don't know why they're allowing it. I don't know why they're using it. It is propaganda at World War II level size. It's wrong. Do not believe that. Please stop stating that. Next thing. The main thing that basically Trump is attacking is the border, and how essentially these individuals who are immigrants coming to this country, whether they're traditional illegal, not legal, whether they're using the door, whether they're using the welded open doors, bottom line, he's saying they're the major problem. I have always maintained that they are a major issue for the short term, but in the long term, they could actually very much so help Social Security recipients because they're paying into the system and don't usually get the benefit or as much of a benefit from it. There was this little article, again, left leaning, so just keep that in mind. The Badger Project, nonpartisan, nonprofit investigative journalism in Wisconsin. Illegal immigrants are reinforcing Social Security, not draining it. They make some interesting points in here. I want to go through it real quick. This was made on July 8th. Every year, workers living in the U.S. illegally pay billions into the Social Security system with little hopes of ever getting it back. So that's true. These illegal workers who are basically here, they're working a job, they pay taxes, the taxes go in, as long as it's not under the table. A lot of them are under the table too. But they pay taxes, it basically goes into the system, they pay FICA taxes, and then they never really get to make a claim on those extra benefits, okay? But remember, a lot of them also work under the table, which means they're not paying taxes. So it's an argument that goes both ways, okay? I think as we digitize the dollar, there's not going to be as much of that going on. But again, nobody really wants the digitized dollar because then, the feds will be pulling up to you as you're selling your lemonade at a lemonade stand with your, little kid there trying to go ahead and show the kid how capitalism works, even though capitalism is kind of fading in this country heavily. All right, this is by Peter Cameron, The Badger Project. Projections estimate that the Social Security Administration will be unable to fully pay the benefits it owes Americans starting in 2035. Again, it will be before that, unless Congress makes some changes. Again, Congress has not made any changes. They've known about this since the 80s, so don't believe the BS. And some prominent voices, including former President Donald Trump at last month's presidential debate, blame unauthorized immigrants, notice how they changed illegal, for draining the Social Security fund. And again, it's all semantics, right? Illegal, unauthorized, they're all just throwing different words in there to see what they can get to stick. It's all manipulation of people's brains to get them to vote one particular way or the other. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security, Trump said of President Joe Biden on the debate stage in Atlanta. Are they trying to put them on Social Security? Yes, because there's an SSI 7-year program for refugees, asylum seekers, immigrants, etc. So are they? Well, everybody has, even the Republicans have put these individuals onto Social Security benefits in the form of supplemental security income, which is the poverty program that basically gives money to disabled poor people, people over 65 that are poor, and immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, etc. So everybody has. The difference is with the Republicans, they had like more of a closed border procedure. They had they had doors, on the border, right? Whereas with the Democrat side, now the doors are literally welded open, which is insanity. But again, do what you want, like what you want. So the truth is almost, they're saying with this article, the truth is almost the exact opposite of true about, these individuals coming in and not being helpful. All right, so let's read through what the article has to say. Quote, if anything, we're gaining from undocumented immigrants, said Karen Holden, a UW-Madison professor emerita of public affairs and consumer science who focuses on Social Security. Paying in without a payoff. Many unauthorized immigrants work off the books. Employers typically pay them in cash without making required tax and insurance contributions for those employees, a significant financial benefit for the employer and liability for the workers. The employer is also committing a crime. Right, but then they're not paying Social Security benefits, and they're also taking up job slots that other individuals that are Americans could be doing if they properly set the jobs up legally. Now, they'll counter with the argument and say Americans aren't going to work out there picking the oranges anyways. And then, of course, the counter to that is, how would we know? Because all of the jobs have already been picked up by immigrants that are getting paid under the table, or some of them over the table, but not getting the benefit of the Social Security money. That's what we're running into. Many other unauthorized immigrants whose employment technically is documented must provide an employer with a Social Security number, which the immigrant does not possess. In those situations, the employee typically fabricates a Social Security number or uses someone else's. They do and they don't. Here's the thing. They've clamped down on a lot of that with the whole using somebody else's Social Security number. And where you saw the most abuse of it was basically with the work that you have a lot of homeless people doing. So the way it would work is that you would have basically work groups or work companies, I don't want to say like the actual names of these companies, but they were a labor company or they were a workforce company. And then these people who are basically low income or homeless, they would sign up, and then that company would go ahead and send out these people to different places, construction sites, cleanup at, giant events, stuff like that. And those individuals, they would go ahead and abuse basically their social security number. So what they would do is if they had one, they would go ahead and throw extra earnings on their social security number to offset what the company actually had coming in and how it was being used. Or they would basically, if they didn't have a social security number, they would just throw it onto a different employee's social security number because they're all homeless. They weren't going to find out anyways, yada, yada, yada. Right. Okay. And we deal with that in Social Security disability all the time. Like we'll pull up the detailed earnings query and we'll see there's a bunch of jobs in there that they never worked, they never did. And then we'll have to submit a document saying, this essentially was, not proper. These were not jobs that they worked. This was, put on them by that labor company. But a lot of that is stopped. And honestly, I can tell you a bunch of the ones in Central Florida aren't doing it anymore because I had to notify them, hey, look, you're doing this. The judges are catching on to this. They're fully aware of it. And the IRS is aware of it now. So stop doing it because they're going to come at you. And they did on some of them. Unlike citizens, immigrant workers who have been paid off the books and those with fabricated Social Security documents cannot receive Social Security and Medicare benefits when the individual hits the appropriate age. Very true. They are, in effect, paying into the system without receiving a payout. Designed by a Wisconsin legislative researcher 9 decades ago, Social Security is a system that has set up barriers to make it very difficult for somebody without a Social Security number or with a false Social Security number to get benefits. Holden said, you cannot get benefits out unless you have a Social Security number that matches the number that the Social Security Administration produces, which is, of course, something that a lot of people are worried about because the SSA has the ability to create Social Security numbers, aka people, and also redesignate Social Security numbers, aka, put them on other people so that they have voting. So everybody's worried about or starting to worry about. In fact, there was a video I did where people started to really start chatting about this, where basically, and I did a study of essentially people who were filed charges against where higher level OIG groups were putting people that were SSA employees in jail because they were creating people inside the system and then paying those people benefits and then collecting those benefits, which is a small scale version of essentially how you could create Social Security numbers, redesignate Social Security numbers for mass voting, which is a problem. So here's the deal, because there's nobody that really checks on that other than OIG, and OIG doesn't usually have an opposing group to who the commissioner is. And the recent commissioner, who was a Trump appointee, just retired on the 29th, a tumultuous situation, in which case you're now going to have an OIG and a commissioner of the SSA, which is basically the head person and the person that checks the head person, both heavy Democrat. So, it's going to be interesting. But to make a point about this, they are right. There are a lot of undocumented individuals who are basically here paying into the system, helping the trust funds, kinda. But the problem is this: all of this could be fixed if they used the door, right? That's, and a lot of people are like, oh shit, I forgot about it. Yeah, if they just use the door and use the federal forms to go ahead and file and begin the process and be part of the system and yada yada. They want to move here. Cool. Let's get them paying taxes. Cool, right? That's always been a weird thing. But again, what we've had over the past 3-ish plus years is unique in the modern world. We've never had an open border where they're saying potentially it's going to reach 9 million on the low end, potentially tens of million on the high end of individuals who have actually gotten through without any crosses or checks or dotted I's or crossed T's. That's never happened in history before in the modern era. So it is a very interesting scenario. Okay, contributing billions to the system. An estimated 70,000 live in Wisconsin, according to the Nonpartisan Migration Policy Institute. An estimated 10.5 million unauthorized immigrants live across the U.S., according to the Pew Research Center, which is not a correct number anymore. Not since Biden's been in. That number is, that used to be the number, but now it's way higher. Studies indicate that they contribute more than 10 billion, that's right, with a B, to Social Security every year, and billions more into Medicare. But again, 10 billion is nothing. It ain't nothing compared to how much they actually need to run this thing, which, just benefits they pay out is around 1.4 trillion. So 10 billion it's like not even, it's barely a line item. It's on the form. It's just not anywhere important and there's no bold to it. By comparison, the Social Security Administration estimates that improper payments, including fraud and payments to the deceased, are estimated at about 3 billion per year. So, and I know the point they're making here, and they're like, yeah, oh my goodness, it's true. The amount of people who have passed away that are receiving benefits through their kids or fraud that occurs, I mean, it's out there. There's a lot of it, which is 3 billion-ish. And then they're saying, basically 10 billion is paid up, in by these immigrants that aren't, properly set up to receive the benefit of it. Again, it's crumbs, itty bitty crumbs compared to the actual payments that occur. Attempting to withdraw Social Security benefits without proper documentation is illegal, and getting caught would lead to deportation, Holden noted. Not now, it doesn't. Like, not back in Trump's era it did, not now. Now they set you up, Holden noted. That threat is another major deterrent for an unauthorized immigrant who might consider trying to access those benefits, which is true, but not right now. It's just not true of how they do it right now. Right now, they catch them, and most of them basically, even if they do something illegal, get put in a new geographic area, and all their forms are filled out, their names on this, names on that, and then, goes from there. And the Social Security Administration is vigilant about monitoring the system. Its Office of the Inspector General hunts for and deters fraud by, among other measures, conducting audits and investigations, searching for weaknesses in the system, and recommending improvements. Not the best argument right now. Consider that the OIG that is in charge of the SSA's Office of Inspector General just found that the SSA committed basically constitutional violations, a form of fraud against its own recipients. Yeah, that's true. The Office of Inspector General of the SSA didn't properly notify people, give them proper outline as to what they're getting hit with overpayments, did not properly go ahead and participate in investigations that were being done about them. Flat out fraud was committed by the SSA Inspector General's office against recipients of SSA benefits that they paid into their entire life. So, not a great argument in this article for the moment, but things will get better in the future. Who knows? Social Security's roots trace back to Edwin Witt, chief of Wisconsin's Legislative Research Library and lifelong resident of the state. In the early 1930s, President Franklin D. Roosevelt asked an assistant secretary of labor, who also happened to be a UW alum, to create an economic safety net. The assistant secretary, Arthur Altmeyer, turned to Witt, who had been the state's expert in drafting laws, as chief of Wisconsin's Legislative Research Library, to develop the program. Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law in 1935. Yeah, awesome person. They just made one major F up, which is that they basically turned it into a giant tax under the taxation clause availability, as opposed to giving people an actual private right to the ownership of those benefits. Yeah, that would have been better. That way, when your benefits aren't proper and they keep reducing your COLA and not giving you fair increases, you could sue them, but you can't sue them under the current system because you're paying a tax. You don't have a legal right to your retirement or your disability. Now, here's the thing. To counter this against what Biden wants, here's an article that came out that basically they did the numbers on Elon Musk, to see, the richest guy, to see how much of an effect he would have on Social Security benefits if he paid all of the FICA taxes above $400,000, basically under the Biden plan. Okay, this was done by Kaylee Kilpack, July 8th. Here's basically what they found. All right, here we go. This statement. Okay, so can you guess how many Americans successfully retire with 1 million saved? They did a bunch of little, like bullet points and stuff, but let's go right to the article. That way you know exactly what's going on. Okay, so here it is. If Elon Musk paid, this was a quote. Okay, this is a Ghilarducci offered a provocative yet insightful calculation. If Elon Musk paid for Social Security just on his salary for the entire year, and some of his capital gains were taxed to fund Social Security, but remember, capital gains, they're assuming that he's going to sell stuff and then make capital gains, right? So it's not just he's going to have investments, but he's going to sell the investments he has and tax those as well. Just this one person, which is not a fair assessment because he's the richest person. So it's like if you took 15+% of the richest person's income, and on top of that, he sold some of his capital gains, it would save 1/20th of the deficit in Social Security. Again, 1/20th of the deficit in Social Security. Now, obviously, that's a mind-boggling fact, because what it really means, just to be fair at the end of the day, is that 1/20th, he's the richest guy. He's going to make the most, he's going to be able to pay off the most deficit. He's going to be able to do the most benefit for this program if he does that. Nobody else under that would have that effect. And of course, it's diminishing returns. The lower and lower you go from the super rich that you interact with, the less they're going to have an effect on that. Okay, so what they said is this, quote, imagine broadening that out to maybe 20,000 other people, she suggested. This is not very much. You don't have to raise the tax rate to any perceptible amount, but just helping share in the funding of Social Security, we could solve that problem overnight. But again, the super rich are never going to pay trillions in new taxes. Like, just, you got to get that through the brain so that you understand they are never going to pay trillions in new taxes. They will just pay other politicians to financially go ahead and basically not allow that rule to go through. The crux of this person's argument is that seemingly modest contributions from the wealthiest Americans could greatly alleviate the financial strains of Social Security. Notice how they state here seemingly modest. They're not modest. They're 15+%. They're massive. They're absolutely huge new taxes. They're taxes in the billions that equate to trillions of dollars. There's nothing modest about it. This in turn would address a more pervasive issue, the cultural and psychological impact of an underfunded retirement system on average Americans. So expecting the rich to pay their fair share is never going to work out. It's never going to pass. Even if Elon Musk would, if they taxed him and some of his capital gains, get 1/20th of the deficit paid off, it's never going to happen. They're never going to allow these rules to get passed through. So Biden's plan is just, it's a never going to happen situation. Now, I am creating a list of things that basically will be sent, one to Biden, Joseph Biden, President Biden, on suggestions of what he should do with Social Security. I'm also creating one that is a list of suggestions for Donald Trump. So I'll do another video specifically on Biden as to things I think they should be doing. These are the things that I think each of these candidates should be promising when it comes to Social Security benefits going forward. And they're tailored to their style, right? For Donald Trump, it's got to be huge. It's got to be wow. It's got to be support our military. It's got to be those sorts of agendas. For Joseph Biden, it's got to be support immigrants. It's got to be, raise SSI people up. It's got to be, change the COLA a little bit. It's got to be those sorts of things, right? So let's go through this real quick. Ideas for Donald Trump. Okay. Number one, give people a legal right to their benefits. If you give them a legal right to their benefits, and he is Mr. Capitalism, and capitalism is de facto about legal rights, right? 9/10 of the law, property law, it's all about legal rights. Do you have a legal right to the thing that you are trying to buy and or sell, right? That's the whole idea of capitalism. The idea is having competing interests to be able to have a right to something that you can buy or sell, okay? So if you give people a legal right, they can then sue the government if the government doesn't give them the proper amount that they've been paying to all their life. It's crucial. It is pro-Trump. Trump should do this. Number two, have VA 100%, right? P&T, TDIU, whatever program they're on, have 100% found disabled VA people be able to automatically get 100% SSDI benefits, right? Or in that case, it would just be a fully favorable or a partially favorable, but they still get their benefits SSDI approval. Why? Here's the thing with this whole situation. Obviously you have to look at the date last insured issue as well, but here's the thing. Trump is pro-military. If he really wants to support the military, he needs to support those who are injured as a result of the military and can't work. So if the VA goes through all this money and time to find them 100%, why do we spend all that money and time at the SSA? Just have them have the same legal standard and get, approval for one is approval for the other. That way, basically, it goes through and you have it work out. Just do that because it supports military people who are not doing well as a result of their service to this country. It will increase the likelihood that people will sign up in the future, which, to be fair, ain't nobody signing up like they used to with the military. There are very, very few people signing up for the military right now. Number three, establish an investment department that releases reports on how best to invest Social Security funds beyond the special treasury bonds, with a history showing how much they have lost by not doing these investments. Start collecting statistics showing why these special treasury bonds are not a good deal for the American people. Start going ahead and putting together a division that can actually invest these bonds internally within the SSA into other markets that will make more money. The return on investment with these special bonds is why we're in this situation to begin with. It's not because taxes are too low. Taxes are much higher than almost every other country out there. Taxes are ridiculous. The middle class is dying right now with their inability to go ahead and pay these taxes. These millennials, which are, by the way, are right now the backbone of paying for stuff, they have student loans and they're trying to get a house. Houses are now off the table, so they just got student loans and they still can't afford anything. While you get people going, oh, they took out a loan, pay it. They took out what should be an illegal level of money borrowed to go and get an education. If you are one of those people, though, who says they need to pay it back, I fully understand your commentary. Just please promise me that if you ever need a lawyer or a doctor, that you do not use them, because you will be going against the thing that you seem to support so much, which is pushing them into poverty while serving you as a person, which is not the American way. But again, if you support that type of, horrible enslavement, you can, of course, just not use lawyers and doctors and accountants and things like that. Number 5, designate a plan for when the retirement trust fund drops 22% and send out an email and printout pamphlet explaining to the retired people what is coming. The retired do not understand what is coming. They have no friggin' clue. A lot of people watching this channel have a better understanding. About 1% of them scream in the comments that I'm fear-mongering. I'm reading you the literal statistics from the SSA website. You don't know because you don't know from notices. That's the problem. The SSA didn't tell you, and they didn't put it in bold writing saying, hey, bro, you got a problem. You're retired. It's about to get shitty. That's the problem. And the other side of the coin is, too, nobody's going to expect you to read through the statistical, analytical, Excel sheets created by the SSA as to where things are at and where they're going. They publish it. You just don't have the background and knowledge or desire to read them and then figure them out. So then when I publish videos explaining them, people go, oh, it's fear-mongering. It's not fear-mongering. It's warning you. The SSA should have a legal duty to warn about how bad this is all getting and how bad it will affect you in the future. So again, this is a big thing too. People live in very big fairy tale land. I mean, it's bigger than Narnia. You have to understand the retirement system, when it happens, when it runs out of its trust fund money, we then have to ask ourselves, will they be able to continue to pay money even beyond that? The new statistics, which I'm doing in the next video, are horrific. They are horrific as to how many retired people there actually will be and how few people will actually be paying in. The statistics they're running off of right now, that they're doing it for projections, are completely wrong. It is very, very, very scary. And I'll tell you the base fundamental. Number 1, there's a ton of boomers, and they're all becoming retired, obviously, at the same point over the same amount of decades. Number 2, the problem is my generation didn't make enough kids. Big problem. My generation also did not go ahead and get high-paying enough jobs because the boomers created an industry that sold all the jobs overseas, and all the marketing and the manufacturing and all that junk added up overseas, and now we don't have enough jobs for basically the millennials, right? I mean, if you want to give like a grade to a particular generation, and I don't mean it to be mean, but the boomers, it wasn't an A or a B or a D or an F. It wasn't on this scale. It was literally at the level of whatever's below an F. An F is where you just fail and you screw up. What the boomers did to America was they literally frauded all future generations out of a future where they could afford to pay for the boomers' retirement. That's how bad it is. And yet people, they don't know. And then they hear it from me and they go, oh, that's impossible. That's where we're at right now. That's the baseline. Next one, 7, end designations of racial programs. Trump's always been about, there's a culture problem, not a racial problem. Although he has had some issues there, some flips back and forth, like, when he said, okay, good genes in this area, good this and that. But, he is the one who has donated more to minority groups than Biden could ever. Like, he's done a lot more of that. And there's a funny part about the Republican side with that. Republicans know that they've got to make some ground there with minorities. So they always do more for the minorities when it comes to like, donating this or trying to let that through or letting the Democrats have this or that or whatever. But they don't get the okay, or they don't get the news coverage on it because it goes against what the belief system is for people with Democrats and Republicans. Democrats are always supposed to support minorities. Republicans are always supposed to support mainline Christian white. Like that's that's what we're demanded to believe by the legacy news channels. But that's not what happens. And it's very interesting. But, as I get older, I constantly see how the world works, which is, of course, the middle class pays for everything. The rich, right, make it seem like they're, so put upon, and the poor are stuck with nothing, and the middle class is the one that gets punished for everything. And that's basically it. That's it's a sad, tragic thing. Next thing, create a program that measures the success of commissioners on achieving the top 30 goals of what they go in to do with the Social Security Administration. We don't have a system. We have literally no system other than general financial figures of, like, how quickly they call you back, how quickly they answer the phone, how quickly they adjudicate claims. We don't have a system that really gauges commissioners at a much higher level. I think security stat is a good direction that Commissioner Martin O'Malley is doing, but I think we need more than that in that direction. Next one, create an automated phone call system where people can call to complete a disability application, and a program will assist them collecting data to complete the application. They need to use AI. They cannot even find enough employees at the SSA to do all these applications. That they need to use AI, because we're just at that point where it's just not going to happen. Yes, they need to have a system where people who can't read or write can still call in, do this stuff. AI can do a lot of those functions now. You can literally have 2 AI phones have a full conversation that will make complete sense. 11, increase the 255 death benefit, super crucial. 12, go ahead, and when people have an overpayment and it's not a intentional, horrible, criminal, whatever, give them an option to reduce the overpayment, where they basically take a course. The problem you'll run into with that is that some people who are on disability benefits or retirement benefits, their intellectual quotient is too low for them to learn anything from the course, or basically they come from a culture where learning was not a mainstay or whatever, so they won't be able to complete the course. So they'll have to make it so that they complete the course but not really understand the stuff. But still, it's part of the process of educating the general public about how to not commit fraud against the SSA, how to not violate the principles and priorities of the SSA. All right, so we've gone through a lot of stuff. Please remember to like. Please remember to subscribe. With that said, over here, head over to Disability Resolution Online. If you go to Google, type in Disability Resolution and give some stars. I always love waking up to those. I go live every Tuesday and Thursday night. I will be live tonight, although I'm going to be doing that other video later tonight. I'm sorry, I thought I would do it after this video, but I have to get back to the calls. But bottom line is, tonight, I'll do that video, and then I will go live, and I'll answer questions. You guys know how the live works. I put the phone over here. You call in. You use a fake name. You get 5 to 7 minutes. No story mode. Have your legal question ready. I will catch you all a little bit later. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. And I'll see you probably maybe like 10-ish, 11-ish p.m. tonight when I go live. Of course, remember, if you need to review something else, like you have a situation with the SSA, you can hire me for a private hour where I basically walk you through what you need to do to fix it. And that's become a very popular item with people, because you can just hire me for an hour to figure out how to fix the problem. I'll catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful night, and I will see you tonight at the live session. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.